Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Mammon's Throne, My Body to the Worms, out March 13th on Hammerheart Records. The album has 7 tracks, 42 minutes in length, and this is the band's third full-length studio album. They are an Australian doom metal band. When I approached this record, the first strength that I found on this album was how the album was designed. At first glance, it might seem like a simple approach. There's not a lot of room to wiggle. You have 7 songs, 42 minutes, there's no interludes. It's an album that almost plays itself. The more you listen to the record, the more you realize that the album is not that straightforward. It's a crafty record in terms of how it showcases the individuality of the songs, at the same time not forgetting what the overall collective wants to represent. They definitely focused on the uniquenesses that each and every single song puts forward, the elements that create those uniquenesses, and how they can spread them around in a way that makes the album feel less linear and definitely more dynamic. And that's exactly what this album offers, a more dynamic experience than I was expecting coming in. It's a great listening experience top to bottom. It's an album that actually feels shorter in its overall length because of how dynamic and fluid it is, and that obviously adds incredible playability to the entire record. Once you get into the sound, the band brings together this mixture of doom and sludge. There is a little bit of some stoner elements, sometimes almost pushing into a psychedelic realm, but I would say at its core, this is definitely more of a doom sludge sounding album. Now, when you have those two genres coming in and influencing a record, you normally end up with a very dense soundscape, allowing the sound to feel almost overwhelming at times. This record has some moments where you can feel that same experience, but it's not consistent with it. The production on the album allows fluctuations to exist within songs and from track to track. Elements within the tracks from a design standpoint, from an overall songwriting perspective, also allow the songs to have some pockets where the track is able to breathe a little bit better. With that comes the ability of the listener to have a little bit of a break, reset, and not completely feel overwhelmed by the experience of the individual songs, which then would result in becoming overwhelmed by the experience of the album. So the production on this record is really important as the songwriting is. You have to create a sound that, while creating that dense experience at times due to its influences, you're still able to see the forest from the trees. You still have enough elements within it and how they're presented that you could hear the difference between the guitars, what they offer, how rich they are, the texture that they have, the impact of the drums, and even the bass. Starting off with the bass, this is an album that doesn't skip on it. You're gonna hear it throughout the entire record. At times, I feel like the bass plays too much of a predominant role within the mix. I don't hate it, but I think at times it could have been pulled back just a little bit. It doesn't add to the density of the songs, but it does become slightly jolting. Now, I don't mind it too much from an overall perspective because it really helps create a little bit of a foundation for these songs and allows the sound to feel like it has a little bit more width and allows the sound to feel like it has a little bit more substance. But toning it down on the edges would allow the bass to still have the same impact in the songs and not feel like it's breaking through a glass ceiling that definitely exists on this record from a sonic perspective. Now, when you look at the guitars are way more dynamic, way more alive than I was expecting them to be. I was honestly coming in expecting to see a more straightforward, linear overall guitar approach, and that's not what I got on this album. The album definitely showcases that you can have a more elevated guitar sound, a more elevated guitar approach, not just from a songwriting perspective, but also from an execution standpoint, and still not lose the ability to bring the listener in and almost drive into the songs with a more penetrating, a more immersive sound experience. The guitars have a lot of life in them, even at moments where you feel like life is completely depleted from the songs. They are definitely one of the spinal cords, if not the spinal cord, of the entire soundscape on this album. I would put it a little bit above what the drums are offering on this record. I absolutely love the drum sound. It has size, and that to me is an important aspect to it, because the density of the songs at times feels a little bit thin or a little bit more palpable because of the impact that the drum sound has within that density. It gives it shape. It doesn't allow the overall sound density to feel just like a blanket that covers everything. It actually gives the album some sort of borders. Like I said, it gives the album a ceiling, allows you to feel like there are extremes as far as where that sound can go, and once it reaches that point, it comes right back to you. So the drums play a very important role in adding size, adding heaviness, but most importantly, adding shape to the way the sound comes across on this album. It also helps define the impact and how much room the guitars have to maneuver. Once you get into the vocals, I felt very divided on the overall vocal approach. I really enjoy the harsh vocals. That I have no issues with. I think the harsh vocals on this album add a sense of despair to the tracks. They definitely add a sense of darkness to the record, and they match really well the overall heavier soundscape that the album offers at times. My main issue with this record is that perhaps the album is too dynamic vocally. There's such a wide range of approaches, of deliveries, that it dilutes the experience at times. And while the clean vocals work really well in certain songs, they don't work really well in every single track. At times they feel a little bit disconnected, not just from the sound, but from the experience that that sound is creating. Almost like the experience is going in one direction while the vocals are going into another. I think that is perhaps where there's more room to grow and more room to develop as far as the band's approach is concerned. Not saying to completely remove them from the equation, but rather be a little bit more precise on where you're going to use them. Having said all of that, I still found this to be a very intriguing, a very interesting, doomier, sludge sounding album. The production is definitely one of the key highlights of the record, as is the individual elements within it, and I think overall this album definitely showcases the capabilities that the band has to create a very interesting sounding record within a genre that sometimes feels too repetitive throughout an entire album listening experience. When it comes to favorite songs or top 3 songs on this record, I want to start off with Senseless Death. Definitely a more death doom style track, a lot of death metal elements, but still with a doom essence at heart within this song, which makes the track feel very heavy and thick and menacing, for lack of a better word. But the doom background within the song definitely catapults this track and allows the track to have that overall very immersive experience. The drums sound really full, and they give size, or they help give size to the way this track hits, a track that has great guitar texture, great guitar versatility, and allows the drums and the guitars together to sound excellent, one feeding off of the other. Now, the underlying bass sound on this track really cements the vibe of the song. At times, it peaks in, it breaks through that glass ceiling ever so slightly. Not enough to really jolt the track, and not enough to really damp the song either. I liked it, but I felt like at times it could have been pulled back just a little bit. Now, there is a great solo section within this track, which allows the song to also have a little bit more of a bridge that feels really stripped down. It almost feels like the song ends. There's an interlude built in within the song, and then the song restarts. Now, when the song restarts after that built-in interlude, is actually feels heavier. I don't know if it's heavier, but it sounds heavier than what it was before the interlude. So it's a really interesting song, because when you're listening to it, it feels like there's 3 songs in one. And that was an interesting approach for a track that opens up the record. What a way of opening up the record. Really letting you know that you don't know what to expect. If you have a song that is this dynamic, that has these many ups and downs throughout the overall delivery of the track from beginning to end. If you have a track that feels like there's 3 songs in one, it's going to tell you exactly that this is a record where you're not really sure what's coming around the corner, not only on a song by song basis, but even within tracks themselves. So the reason I picked this song is not necessarily because it's my favorite song on the record. It's just because it's a song that's really important in terms of what it sets up in the mind of the listener as far as what the rest of the experience is going to be all about. I think it's a great opening track because it puts all the cards on the table. Then you have a track like Everyday More Sickened. Man, the drums sound excellent on this song. The guitars sound excellent on this song. The guitars have a little bit more fuzz on this track than, for example, Senseless Death. It also has a little bit more of a sludgier influence as far as the way the heaviness of the track really drags you down. This track also has a great guitar melody on top of it all. The bass feels extremely well refined within the context of the sound and within the context of the overall execution. The vocals are incredibly dynamic throughout the entire song. A wide range of deliveries from the harsher vocals to the clean vocals and everything in between. So it's a great track that has a great atmosphere that resonates not just from the sound of the track, but also from how dynamic the vocals are. But it all comes down to the consistency of the quality and execution of drums and guitars together, making the song feel very rich. Even though it has that fuzziness to it, the song never becomes increasingly dense, so you're always able to see all of the different details that make up this really interesting track all around. It also showcases what I said earlier about the bass, on where you can have a bass that has an impact, a clear impact on the track, but not to the point that breaks that glass ceiling and becomes intrusive. So it's a great song from a design standpoint, but as well as from an execution look as well. Then you have An Angel's Grace. Vocals are definitely heavier and more intense on this song. They add a level of aggression to the track that I think it's really important. It really allows the overall song to feel a lot heavier, because even when the song musically may not be as heavy as some other tracks on the album, the consistency of that heaviness coming out of the vocals helps add size and helps add heaviness to the way the track comes across. I love that mixture of doom and sludge. This song does it really well as well, and the clean vocals that the track offers increase the level of darkness within the track. So it's a really interesting song because the vocals on this track, perhaps more than any other, and it's not like the vocals are less dynamic or more dynamic on this song, or that you have less of a range or more of a range. This track kind of offers vocally similar elements that you've seen in other songs. Everyday More Sickened, for example. So, but this track, the ability of using the vocals into the same, almost to the same extent as you're going to find throughout the entire record, but using them differently, because on this track the vocals come across more like an instrument and a lot less like vocals. The vocals are used on this song to create more atmosphere, to create more texture within the track, to really help the sound that's behind them feel more complete. And I felt like that was something unique to this song, something that I didn't really get throughout the rest of the album. I felt like other tracks had similar dynamics vocally, but I didn't get that same vibe. I didn't get that same experience of the vocals being more of an instrument that allows themselves to pair up with everything else and create deeper impacts and deeper meanings within the song. So I felt like this was a very unique track from that perspective, and it works extremely well in setting the tone and setting itself apart from other songs while using the exact same elements. This is it, Mammon's Throne with My Body to the Worms, once again out March 13th on Hammerheart Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.